No, but still we're working, you know.
Yeah, you make a living.
Right.
So again, how does this work? You get paid through Uber, and then we get charged by them, or how does it work?
So when you sign in the application,
right,
you can attach your credit card or debit card, right?
Right.
So when you request on me, they'll show to you what kind of car you want. Like you want an Uber Pool, you want an Uber X, or Uber Express. So the price is a difference. I think you guys request Uber Pool. So they're gonna like amount the price. They will show to you in the application, right?
Okay.
So they're gonna like take that money from your credit card, the one you attach.
Okay, got it. So what's the difference from, I saw Uber EX, or they had different Uber economy?
Oh yes. The Uber Express Police, like you guys actually wanna like supposed to be shared with other lady.
Right.
So I went there to pick up her. She's right down the street. I waited almost like 3 minutes. She didn't show up.
Okay.
So the application is gonna cancel by itself.
All right.
Because they don't wanna like yell you a lot. So she didn't supposed to become. So they're gonna charge you.
Oh, okay, I got you. So economy is when you share the rides.
Right.
Got it. That's what I thought it said. All right. Okay.
It's a good technology.
Yeah, but everybody, yeah, especially here, that's what everybody keeps. We got brought to the.
I don't know how well that works.
Yeah, we went to the.
Pick up 12 other people.
Mount Vernon. Well, you got different. Like, so that was the economy. They brought us to the Mount Vernon jeweler. All right, so we had Mount Vernon.
And I got a free hair ride.
Yeah, I know. He had no air conditioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hold them. No, she's away. Okay, we're at Mount Vernon, George Washington's house, not the jeweler that Uber guy wanted to bring us to. Anyway, it's 10:08. First time I use Uber. Anyway, here we are.
And then about a week before the trip, we started looking into the details, and I said, let's see how big this room is. And he literally gave us 2 separate rooms that are connected by a door. One of them being the set plans like drawn out on the table.
You know what? I don't care too much about the gardens and the greenhouses and the George Washington's landscape design. It's just very hot, very humid, just like home. I mean, might as well be walking in the sun at the house. It's 100% humidity, 90-something degrees. And I got this to keep the sun off of it. So I'm gonna just sit right here.
And you can't take pictures. The first house built here.
Hey guys, if there's any space in front of you, if you could please try and move as far forward as we can.
It's my fault. I told them you could come up.
Oh, for the sun.
That's okay. I told them to find a beer in the shade.
I could.
Now remember you have to remember where we begin and end.
So not normally the case, but this time it is the case. Just no flash photography, and please try to take pictures as you enter the rooms. That way we're not lingering at the end. Does that make sense?
Change something and I couldn't hear the rest of her story.
Yes, so if you look at the mansion, it's not symmetric, even though you would think it would be, because George Washington, like most people at that time, liked symmetry in architecture. So the central door there, if you look at the windows to the left and right, you can see it's not symmetric. And that's because as he expanded the home, he moved the staircase over, which had to move the door, which had to move some windows. And so to try to recover the illusion of symmetry, he added that cupola, that round structure up top, which draws your eyes up there and gives you that illusion that it's symmetric when really it's not. So Washington was a practical man. He had to make things work, even though he might have liked the more aesthetic, symmetric view. And maybe that's a metaphor for his leadership. He did what worked.
Yep.
Other questions I can answer?
Yes.
Yes. No, great.
Do they have a termite problem here? I was just wondering.
Not that I know of. I think it's treated on a regular.
General Washington, I feel, would have had air conditioning had it been invented yet. He certainly was wealthy enough. You wouldn't mind closing the door behind you, please? Thank you. So welcome everyone. This is the start of your house tour. First of all, just to give you all a little bit of background on how the Washington's home grew and changed over time. The original structure his father had built in 1735 would have looked a lot like that. 1 story and a half loft. Would have been the central portion of the home as you see it today. By 1759, when General Washington came to inherit the property, he would have added on the 2nd and the 3rd floor to the home. It was also at that time that he had brought his new wife, Martha Dandridge Custis, to the estate. She at that time was the wealthiest widow in the state of Virginia, so she was a real catch for the general. She also brought with her 2 small children from her previous marriage. The Washingtons never had children together, but he had very much raised those children and considered them as his own. By 1789, the home would look much like you see it today, with the wings on either side, the pediment, the cupola, all those fancy decorative features added on. By that time, the mansion is 21 rooms total, about 11,000 square feet. The home as you see it today, all the paint colors, furnishings are based off of his 1799 death inventory, so it would have looked much like it had at the time of his death. This space that we're currently in, this is the servants' hall. This would have been typically where servants of the guests had stayed, so guests would stay in the mansion, their servants would stay here. Typically freed hired help, tutors, coachmen, valet, would have stayed in this space. If they had brought an enslaved servant with them as well, they would have been in the slaves' quarters, but they would have been off duty. The Washingtons would have had all of their servants take care of the guests in the home. So if you go through the door there, walk through that it was supposed to be, so he came by. It was a fireplace. Yeah.
I'm changing the porch name to the Cookview.
Okay.
Washington will have added on to his home, but also because there was always something new going on in here. Sorry, sir, video is not. Thought Vernon was perfectly situated here on the Potomac River, and that will be your next destination. I'll invite you out onto the piazza. Please do enjoy the view. Thanks for coming out.
House, the part that his father built. So his father would have built this wall on the riverside, that wall on the carriage side, up to the fireplaces. The ceiling would have been lower. There was a half a story sleeping loft and a skinny staircase to the loft. But now it is a 21-room mansion because Washington has been working on it. Carriages would come right outside that door, and visitors were greeted by Frank Lee, an enslaved butler. If you were a friend of the family, you came to the informal parlor, and that has a bird cage. Mrs. Washington liked birds. George Washington, not so much. The parlor that is undergoing restoration is the formal parlor. That's where Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe would have been entertained. And you can get a picture of the walls from Dad's house, 1730s. Next time you visit, it'll be all done. So they're the lath and plaster wall. The guest bedroom here, you actually see better coming down the back stairs, so it's always fun. That is the green dining room. Be sure you take a look at the ceiling. The ceiling in the green dining room is original. It's really pretty. Green and blue paint colors are expensive. We have a lot of them. A guest would have breakfast at 7 and dinner at 3. Seems a little early, but every day is like Thanksgiving. It'll take you 2 hours to eat the meal. So who knows what George Washington's favorite breakfast was? Pancakes. Cornmeal pancakes with lots of butter and honey. This key in the case is our most famous object in this room, the key to the Bastille. Below is a picture of the Bastille being destroyed to start the French Revolution. They celebrate Bastille Day. The Marquis de Lafayette sent President Washington that key as a symbol of liberty, and it's been right there for over 200 years. You can't touch that key, but you can touch the railing. That railing going up the stairs is from 1758. Think of all the famous people who have touched it, and you may add your hands going up. I would wash your hands before you had lunch. So go right on up. The tour continues. If you can't take the stairs, we can sit you outside with a book that shows everybody it.
Guest bedrooms. So 5 right around you guys on this floor, and then those stairs to the doorway lead up to the 3rd floor, and there's 3 more guest bedrooms up there, along with 4 storage rooms. So there's a total of 9 guest bedrooms in the house, and they certainly needed all of that space. So the year after Washington's presidency was the most visitors. He recorded there was 677 people that spent the night in that year. So constantly people coming and going. People either fascinated with Washington, wanting to see the father of our country, as well as kind of southern hospitality back then. If anybody was traveling and needed a place to stay at night, all they had to do was ask. So to help with all those people, there was about 12 to 15 enslaved housemates, like Caroline, Vernon, and Molly. So they would take firewood, bring it in here, change the sheets, take out the chamber pots. There's no bathrooms, those kind of jobs. So they really helped the Washingtons have the hospitality that they were able to. But with all those guests, it was also kind of hard for them to record where people stayed. So there's 2 rooms we do know who stayed in. This corner bedroom with the big portrait, that is Lafayette's room. So that is the Marquis de Lafayette in that portrait on the wall. The other room is this green bedroom to my right. That was used by Mrs. Washington's granddaughter, Nellie. And Nellie actually had a baby in there in her adult life, so that crib in there is original. It was a gift to her from Mrs. Washington. But the little room over here also is a bit different from the rest. So it's a little smaller, a little plainer. It actually used to be a closet, and then needed more space for all those guests, so they converted it into a guest bedroom. You guys are more than welcome to take pictures. I know some of you didn't get the chance to yet. And take a look around. You're actually going to head through this yellow bedroom to the Washington's bedroom next. So whenever you're ready, you can go through.
The door behind you wasn't there. And right there was an exterior wall to a 2-story building. And George Washington, during the Revolutionary War era, would be okay because he won't stay for long when he visits. So with guests, he'll be okay. But after the Revolutionary War, he will need his private area, which he created by extending this wall to that wall. This became the bedroom of George and Martha Washington. The only way in and out of this private area, the staircase. A bed ordered by Mrs. Washington based on the height of George Washington. 6'2½", that was his height. The 2 inner doors that you see are doors to her closet. George Washington's closet, not there. Died in the same room, died of a throat infection, an infection in the throat, known as quinsy. Today, many would say that's equivalent to epiglottitis. And she died 2 years and then some months after. He in the throat.
He didn't have teeth.
Yeah, that's true. As at the time of his first term in office, he had only a tooth. Yeah.
He likes sweets.
A complex. I wish I'm at Q&A to answer that question. But when you get out of the kitchen, ask Yeah. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, it's time to go see George Washington's closet in his study. Okay? When you get to the at the foot of the staircase, make a left. Okay? Please watch your heads. Please watch your heads.
We're not gonna have a 6.5.
6'2.5".
We're not gonna have a 6'2.5" head clearance.
So he always has to die. Mrs. Washington does not have to because she is 5'11".
Yes, always.
Yeah.
You sit in the chair working wrong, and it moves the fan. You don't have to fan yourself. So they can just keep working on these big documents and get the country up. Across the room, the actual portrait of George Washington's half-brother Lawrence. Lawrence is the father figure for George Washington. And just so you know, they were loyal to the King of England. There was no plan to break away. The Washingtons descended from King John, the king responsible for the Magna Carta, and 9 of the signatory barons. George Washington was supposed to go to England to study. He wanted to become a commissioned British naval officer. But all this is taken away because of the early death of his father when he's 11. That ended his education, and George Washington had to take on a trade. He became a land surveyor. That is his land surveyor telescope and land surveyor cane. And in the end, it was his knowledge of strategic territory, land, waterway, alliances with Indian tribes, and the alliance and help of the French that gave him the final victory in the Revolutionary War. Now, this is George Washington's desk. He commissions his desk when he steps down from the presidency in Philadelphia. And at that time, he declined an offer for a 3rd term in office. As a leader can only serve 2 terms to ensure the peaceful transition of power. And we think this is his greatest legacy, that peaceful transition of power. So you can go out this door, go left to the kitchen. Okay, John Paul Jones. We don't have an army, we don't have a navy. He taps into people based on skill and ability. John Paul Jones had previously been a slave ship driver, but he knew ships, he knew various maritime structures, so he makes him the head of the American Navy. He rattles the British Navy by telling them, we've just begun to fight. Now, that's Jacques Decaire, the French finance minister. There's a little cost involved with the alliance. It still helps us in the end, but there was money that was involved. Over here, this is a copy of the Houdon bust. The original is in our museum. So, for George Washington's, I believe it is 53rd birthday, some of the founding fathers put together some money and they bring over a French sculptor, Mr. Houdon, to do a sculpture of George Washington. And his family at that time said this is the most accurate likeness of George Washington at the age of around 53. How about that? Okay.
Thank you so much.
And George Washington poses for this. This is George Washington as the American Cincinnatus. Cincinnatus was a Roman general who was called from his retirement in his farm twice to save the Roman Empire. Then they offer him the emperorship for like, I'm done. That's for George Washington. Yeah, he poses for that. And, yeah. See him with that Roman war motif around his head. Yeah.
Did he put that on his head when they did?
Well, the sculptor, well, since he's representing Cincinnatus, so you have the Society of Cincinnati, you know, whatever. So it's going back to the time of the Romans and in antiquity, these big leaders who already have some sort of structure for balancing power and not staying in.
Sorry.
And I have the last person out to close the outside door. Those who are coming in, welcome to George Washington's very private online study.
You were probably told that anything that created a commotion like heat or smoke or noise or whatever it is not really attached to the house because the house is reading, sleeping, and entertaining, and anything that created that commotion was normally on site if you could afford it. And trust me, General Washington could afford to have a separate building and a kitchen. A lot of the kitchens were separate, all right, just for that reason. We've got this monstrous fireplace, and people get the impression that there was, hey folks, come on in. And people get the impression that there was a roaring fire in here, and that's not the case. If there was a roaring fire, this would be a fireplace and not a hearth. A hearth is for cooking. You don't see a stove. That cast iron monstrosity didn't get moved into the house until about 100 years later when they started to put kitchens in the house. All right. Most of the stuff was done outside. If you put those, talk about cast iron monstrosities, you've got these 50-pound cast iron pots that you put over the various mounds of coals or embers. You can cook 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things at one time that way, and you didn't need that huge fire. Again, money, so a separate oven. Normally you would not have a separate oven in most houses. They would cook on the hearth, okay?
Here, the kitchen set for a dish of ice cream. However, this is something that would not occur right now. Ice cream, June, the ice would melt by then. They have not changed this out. But you can see the sugar and the strawberries and the cream and the ice cream maker there. And then once the ice melted, of course, there was no ice cream. But General Washington did have a favorite flavor of ice cream, and it was Worcester ice cream. Now, do you have... Why did I get the frowning face?
It was what ice cream?
That's sweet, savory, and so, behind you is a scullery. A scullery is for washing dishes and scrubbing pots and pans. Next to it is a larder. A larder is a cool room. All right? It is not refrigerated. It is not a meat locker. Those are not meat hooks. It is a pantry for temporary storage. So, enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks for coming on this wonderful holiday. We appreciate your business.
Let me take a phone.
Thank you.
This is George Foreman Grill.
That's George Washington, right? Hey, come on in, guys. All the way on in.
Anyway, it gets very hot. Here's some more.
Yes, I do.
I gotta switch memory cards. Okay, I'm gonna get Uber to pick. Like walking in the Sahara Desert. But in Louisiana, humidity is just like, God, sweating to death. And then we're going uphill. I hate going uphill. It's killing me. Going uphill.
We're near in the farm area.
This farm.
Yes.
No shit, cowboy.
Mount Vernon. Like in the store? No, just in whole grounds. Oh. And everything in the store too.
I think probably like just taking the tour of the house and seeing the grounds and everything, just because I'm really interested in history. So it's just really cool seeing, you know, where people live.
Yeah. Now you got to do tours down in the South Louisiana. Did you get to tour the plantations there?
We had one of the organizations that I was in. We kind of been at a plantation, but
What plantations?
not away.
Not away.
But we actually did. There's the Rural Life Museum in Baton Rouge that I went to for a class, which was really interesting. But the worker, like the lady who was giving us the tour guide, kept calling slaves workers, and so everyone was like,
It's so hot. You need to check out bags when we come back in. He almost threw me out because I asked too many questions. TSA is at George Washington's house, so y'all remember that. Look at this map too.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do.
Wharf is on the other side of the estate.
The ones that are inside, you won't be able to see them. So you can get an eye full of them out here. Powered by this water source to the right, that's called the mill race. In Washington's time, his mill race 2 miles long going that direction. Because 200 years ago, 2 miles from the top of a hill, and 2 creeks would have been dammed to make a nice big mill pond. Times of drought, times of freezing temperature, Washington had excess water to be able to run this mill as much as possible. Real simply look at it, no water, no production, no money. Washington makes a lot of money here. He'll be selling super fine white flour, Portugal, Spain, France, certain tip of Italy, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, the West Indies, really anywhere and everywhere to make a profit he'll ship it. That'll be opposed to tobacco, which can only be sold to Britain, with these British ship captains, British merchants, British sailors, British insurance policy holders. Get your tobacco to Britain, where the British then tell you how much it's worth. So you can imagine, it's not quite the best of business. So we'll do, in 1766, is they'll switch from growing tobacco to growing wheat. Building like this one constructed, 1771. It's a merchant-sized mill, handle demand of all the grain that we produced here. And then this is a reconstruction of that from 1932 in the state of Virginia for Washington's 200th birthday. Now it's actually a working mill, so we're going to get started. And between 1997 and 2002, the Mount Vernon Ladies Association took over. We were corn into corn meal. I think I cut you off. Did you have a question?
I was wondering because my family came in 1650 and they were doing tobacco and then they switched over to grill grill to do the wheat, and that's because they could only sell it to.
Where did your family come over?
They came up to where Jamestown is, and then they went to Virginia and then to North Carolina.
So kind of what happens in this part of Virginia, there's red clay under where we are, so the soil just doesn't rejuvenate. Tobacco is only really good around the Chesapeake because the soil is a lot better. It doesn't have that clay. Into North Carolina, they still grow tobacco today, but closer to the sea. So if they moved, as people start going more and more west, a lot of people stop growing tobacco and start doing grains, just because the soil
because of the soil. Gotcha. And they also use tobacco as money to
trade. Yeah.
Trade.
It's barter.
Yes.
Barter.
Oh, not bad. Definitely dressed like a tourist.
Look, it's the railing over here. Cooler in here. What I'm standing on is called the stone floor. In case you're to the right or over to the left, you're going to see two sets of stones. One to my right is a French burstone coming from the Marne River Valley of France, right outside of Paris, made of a freshwater quartz. So very heavy, very sharp, and very expensive. General Washington's going to spend a lot of money to stone just like this one here, really for the sole purpose of grinding super fine white flour from his wheat. The finer the flour, the whiter the flour, the more money it's going to be worth. Don't put any corn, rye, or oats, or barley in it. Different colors, different textures will actually significantly decrease the value of that white flour. That's why we can really have this stone here to the left. This is what we're going to be using today. If we want to shift on down the hill. Fill it up right here. This one's going to be a locally quarried granite. Worth about half as much as the French stone used for all the other grains. It is look for corn. Corn has been the second most produced crop here on Mount Vernon. We used to feed all the workers, all the Washingtons, and all the visitors here every year. Just to give you an idea, we get about 280,000 pounds on that side, 180,000 pounds on this one per year in the Washington time. So be very productive in that. When you're looking at them, we're going to look and work virtually identical. Both stones have this wooden furniture around them. Keeps the grain just spurting out all over the place. Also, two stones inside. Think of my hands as a two stone. Have your bed stone next to the floor, always stationary. The runner stone on top of that. I'm sure you've all gone like this before. You have a little friction in your hands that got warm. Well, if that were to happen between the stones, you'd actually damage them. So you want to find a way to get the runner stone to rise up and then start spinning. The way that's done is downstairs there's a 10-foot lever called the lighter staff. The miller pulls on it and gap the stones. And come over to this stick right here, pull down on it, and if you follow it, go back into that log flume back there, open up a trap door, get our 16-foot pitch back water wheel start spinning. That'll get to the speed you want. We'll come back to the lighter staff and judge how fine or how coarse you want the grain to come. Nice fine corn meal. Have the stones close together. Anybody like grits? So for grits, it's a coarser grind. That means you have your stones further apart. Then you're downstairs making sure no rock or sand is falling out in that back and just coming apart. You smell a burnt popcorn smell, really bad. You're destroying the grains and the stones. I think stones can last 100, 150, possibly 200 years if properly maintained. And General Washington expects that. It's to be the case you just don't be the person who has to go over and tell him you just destroyed his mill. You can imagine, not quite the best of conversations that could happen. You don't have questions or anything before I go downstairs and get started? You're going to stay up here like 10, 15 seconds, see some corn falling to the top of the water wheel, then head on down the stairs back there, check the gearing out and everything underneath me. If you go on the side, you can see the water wheel eye to eye. Hope you have a rest afternoon.
Pull on that lever, which is the same.
Cornmeal will fall on through. The tailings, the hull, the outer waxy part of the corn isn't stuck in your teeth when you go down to the barrel and use to feed the livestock. So nothing here is going to be missing. Then if you look at the gearing, there's a beeswax lubricant on it. Washington's time, they're going to use an animal fat. And they serve the same purpose, except for animal fat, it gets some heat to it, not the most pleasant thing to be around. So let's use the odorless beeswax. You don't have questions about it?
Is that, what did they, I mean, is that like a cheesecloth that they used?
Aluminum woven works made here.
Oh.
Well, the next product we're going to use storage, so if you all go through here, just follow the path of the same path of corn, rye, and malted barley to drink with. Will be right second.
So this is the fine and that's the grits?
This is cornmeal and that's the shells.
Oh, that's the shells. So how did I didn't see how it separates.
There's a separate on top.
Well, it's like screen.
Oh, gotcha.
Like you're mining for gold.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I know. I should have brought my rod and reel. Should have brought the rod and reel, but it wouldn't let me take it on the plane.
Firewood.
Welcome to Washington's distillery. The idea of this distillery was not that of Washington. It was the idea of his brand new plantation manager named James Anderson. Anderson came to the plantation in 1797 and saw that Washington had all he needed here to be successful as a commercial distiller. He decided to propose the idea to Washington, though Washington would initially reject the idea. He was primarily worried about the type of people a business like this might attract. People he called idlers whom he worried might cheat the distiller and rob the still. Anderson, however, was persistent on the matter and able to convince Washington to allow a test batch. Washington authorized the use of 2 stills and instructed Anderson to set up inside the cooper shop here at Vernon. Anderson took a slave, put him to work, and had him create about 600 gallons of whiskey. The whiskey would be taken to Alexandria, Virginia, where it was sold at a profit. Washington, in the meantime, was writing to a longtime friend of his who was a rum distiller in Alexandria seeking advice. His friend reassured him and stated if Anderson could make a quality product, he saw no reason why it couldn't be sold. That would convince Washington. In October of 1797, he ordered his enslaved masons and carpenters to work on the construction of the distillery. They had the building up and running by March of 1798. At that point, Washington took 6 slaves and put them to work in here. Their names were Daniel, James, Nat, Pete, Timothy, and Hanson. Timothy was the youngest of them at the age of 14 years old. They would be the ones who were primarily making the whiskey inside the distillery. Washington would also hire 2 overseers to manage the business for him, one of which was James Anderson's son, John. In order to make their whiskey, they would first start with the need for hot water and thus the 210-gallon copper boiler. Once the water had reached the boil, the slave, taking those 2 awkward wooden ladles in front, would haul out 100 gallons of boiling water and pour that into one of these large barrels called a mash tun. While doing that, another slave would be adding in first rye and then corn. They'd let that mixture sit for a few hours, and then they would add in malted barley. The barley will take the starches from the 2 previous grains, turning them into sugars. They'd let that sit for a few hours more, and then they would add in yeast. The yeast will take those sugars and turn that into alcohol over the next 3 days. At that point, fermentation was complete and distillation ready to begin. The slaves then taking buckets from different bed bags and transferred over to the still, filling it from the top here. Once the still is full, reassembled as you see it here. Top piece is called the onion, down light arm, connected to the worm. The worm is going to be what cools down the whiskey. First, they're going to have to boil it off. The slaves would start a fire underneath the still. That fire would boil off the alcohol. Alcohol vapor would rise to the top of the onion, work its way down the arm, and enter the worm. They would then bring in cold water from the mill race outside, filling up the barrel. They cool down the worm, condensing the alcohol vapor inside of it back into a liquid. Warm water collects out of the wooden tap in front, while distilled spirit will come out of the copper pipe protruding from the rear. First run through is called low wine, and it can be set aside. The slaves would then clean out the spent mash. Once the still is clean, the low wine would go back inside and go through the still a second time. This time what came out was called common whiskey. Approximately 45% alcohol. The Washington had placed in barrels and shipped up river to Alexandria, Virginia, where it would be sold at tavern bins. 1798, the slaves in here produced 4,500 gallons, and in 1799, 10,900. Washington would die at the end of the year, however, and the land was inherited by his nephew, Lawrence Lewis. Lewis would shut the doors to the business in 1808, and 1814 the building burned down. What you're standing here is the 2005 to 2007 reconstruction of that distillery. Built on the original foundation, today we are an active distillery. We produce the whiskey sold inside of our gift shops here every March and November when our site's closed to the public. Do you all have any questions?
So it was the same number of workers who produced, what, twice the number in a year?
It's longer times to do it, and commercially at least has been demonstrated through recent books on the history of slavery and its economy. It's amazing what you can get forced labor to do.
What's coming out of this right now?
Water.
And fill up my dip?
If you want to, it's
No,
the
I don't
same
want
water
to.
that's in the mill race, so
How much do you produce now?
approximately 1,400 gallons,
Not that much more. For how many people?
twice as many.
What's the source of the water for the mill?
It's on a pump system today. So still same water there between the kettle races and the top of it. Dough run will often overflow our kettle race, so we'll get water from there as well. We go and transition. It also comes with fish. We do have a team of fish where we mill race stuff. I don't know exactly what that was at.
Why did you shut it down?
And it just wasn't as profitable. The ones we took down the original mill sometime between 1846 and 1860. We don't know exactly when they took it down, but sometime in that 1400 ballpark.
They don't do the grain and sell time. They don't sell flour.
Yeah. No, we don't sell flour. The only flour that we mill is our pancake mix. But we don't mill it on the wheat stones that Washington had. As it's connected to the Evans system and we can't clean it, the FDA doesn't like it.
It's true. So do you know what happened to the original stones?
What was that one time?
What happened to the original stones?
We don't know. So there are some buildings that claim to have stones from the distillery or the mill in them, but there's no way to verify it.
You make the whiskey on this equipment.
Yes. And if I don't have any more questions, above stairs there is a museum, and above stairs is just for the regular apartment.
I guess you got
Like in Tennessee, you had moonshine to give you free
well, in
sample.
Valley World, they
Mm.
did.
Fine spirit. You might even call me an expert. The name is Anderson, James Anderson, and I'm General Washington's farm manager. That should have our Crete. We could start a new venture making the best liked spirit in America. Whiskey. The timing was perfect. Not many years back, as President Washington, he had levied an excise tax on distilled spirits and stirred up quite a revolt called the Whiskey Rebellion. He wasn't against the making of spirits at all, far from it, as he was partial to the and we did a bully trade. 4,000 gallons of it in our first year. We get more than 10,000 gallons. After all this talk about whiskey, you'll not do, and she can hold up to 120 gallons. You start with 9 gallons of water heated to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Then add to it 40 pounds of Indian cornmeal. You got to be sure to give the mash a good stirring. Then let it stand for 2 hours. Don't blister yourself there, Daniel. Then you add boiling hot water and add 10 pounds of malt. Mind the time and temperature now, Daniel. If she's too hot for too long, we'll have whiskey that tastes like burnt toast. Next, you add 40 pounds of rye. Work it well and let it set. Good work, Nat. Then you add your yeast. Cover it and lave it until it's fit for the still. The resulting brew is poured into one of those beauties, a copper pot still, and heated by a wood fire. Here's where a wee bit of magic takes place.
So I'm using Uber. This is going to be a second Uber deal.
What kind of vehicle is it?
It's a black Honda Accord. Cat Sella. Anyway, let's see how this works.